Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good evening. How's everybody doing? Okay, we are on day two of this amazing journey of creativity. And we have what a lineup for today. You guys are going to be so blessed with Joel and Dal. And I'm just going to share a little bit about them just to introduce them. So while I'm doing that, if you did the activation yesterday, post in the activation or post in the comment section, the chat, what did you do with your paper clip? Okay. What creative idea did you come up with using your paper clip? So in the comments, let's see what you guys have done. Okay. So Dal is a retired professional clarinist, clarinetist. That took a minute. And music educator in the Northwest, all having taught at the collegiate level as well as in the public school system. She's played professional ensembles, taught elementary music, middle school band, was the music director for a community theater, and was staff accompanist in the public schools. A she brings a classic flavor into music, and she creates these musical frequencies of healing. Guys, if you haven't heard any of Dal's music, it is really, really awesome. She's also got a very scientific approach to these things. She calls herself a little geeky classic musical person, okay? Joel began his early years in traditional church ministry and church planting. Then he pivoted to professional music for a decade, touring and opening for some household names like, sorry, my computer, Rio Speedwagon, Collective Soul, and others. Stepping away from music for a scene, Joel advanced in digital marketing and business development, where he produced podcasts for Fortune 500 CEOs like Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan, company founder like Ken Lagone from Home Depot, and professional athletes like Tom Brady and Rory McIlroy. Joel is also passionate about helping people come into the fullness of their identity through powerful spiritual disciplines. Joel also helped co-lead Iron Bell Music, a worship group focused on leading and recording original adoration worship music. So, guys, this is what a lineup. I feel like my tongue is like in a different frequency. My head and my tongue is not aligned this morning. So I'm going to give this over to Joel and to Dal, and let's dive in this beautiful creative journey.
Well, thank you. That was an awesome introduction. Dell and I are super excited to be participating in this event, and we're super thankful for Tanya, all the work that she's put into this. I believe, I think we're going to look back on this kind of event and be like, oh, we were tracking with what God was about to do. And like in advance, like there's a need for us all to press into what does it look like to be creative with him, in union with him, in this new kind of time that we're in. And so, Tanya, thank you for all the effort, all the planning, all the stuff that you had to do to make pull this thing off. And thank you to all the other people that are presenting. You guys are going to get your socks blessed off, or socks blessed off. Is that right? I don't know. Knocked off by Dell. She's going to be bringing some really, really cool insights where she is going to talk us through what she calls like the frequencies of creation. And I always like I'm a heart guy, so I would always say I create out of the heart, and like the way that Kirby Delanerol talks about how the heart's a field, and so I would say it's like out of the overflow of the heart, but it's the same thing. We're just talking about it and seeing all these things from a different street corner, right? So some of the stuff that I wanted to bring up today. Um, we're going to be three specific things. We're going to be very conversational. If you got questions, just throw it in the chat. We can answer questions as we go. We're going to have some activations as we go. But the three things that I really wanted to hit were questions for yourself. That's number one, questions for yourself. Two, questions for God. And then three, I was just going to talk a little bit about my creative process and maybe kind of give you like a peek into that space. But first, as we all began prepping for this, like with Tanya and all the other people that are presenting, we got on a couple different calls in the past month just to talk about what's trying to happen. What is it that wants to happen, and how do we serve it really well? And while we were having that dialogue, it was like clear as day. There was like this phrase in me, like we're entering a new time. We're entering a new age. And when you enter a new time and a new age, it requires new systems. And those new systems, in order for us to tap into those or even discover what they are, requires a brand new creativity, like a level up, an upgrade in our creativity. And I feel like that's what we're all here for. And so I know that Dell and I are presenting today, but we're here for the same thing you are. We need an upgrade in creativity as well. So there's no professionals here, there's no professional creatives. It's like we all need what it is that we're talking about. And so some of the things that we're talking about haven't even been created yet. We're talking about something that is like I feel like we're on the precipice or on the verge of walking into. And so we're going to talk about some of our processes, some protocols and things that have got us to where we are, and they're going to be incredibly helpful for you. But I will also say, some of the things that got us here won't get us where we're going. And so also learning to be able to, this technique or this protocol or this spiritual discipline or whatever has gotten me so far, but it's okay to be like, just let some of these things open-handed, let some of them go and say, God, are you moving me into some new processes? But so I digress. Going back, want to say this. So Darren and Jamie presented yesterday, and if you did not get a chance to see it, go back and watch it. It is so wonderful, so many amazing insights. And Darren brought up a definition of creativity that I really loved. Um, I don't think he coined it. I think he gave credit to somebody else, but it's basically a connection. Creativity is a connection between two unseemingly unrelated things. So it's finding where's that connection between these unseemingly unreal or seemingly unrelated things. I'm gonna get that right. And so, in God, all things are connected. There's union. There's a perfection there. And Dell, jump in anytime. So if you hear me say something that you want to chime in on, just chime in. Same with you, Tanya. Um, but to be in relationship with God is to be creative. It can be that. It really is that simple. Just to be in relationship with him is to be creative because he's creative. I mean, that's something that's central to him. So just to being in relationship with him. So, um, you know, everything needs union or solution. So basically, there's a fall, there's discord, there's disconnection, and all like you could even define reconciliation. Like Paul says, we're ministers of reconciliation. You could describe that as literally, we're just bringing things back into union. That's what we're doing. We're bringing it back into flow. We're bringing it back into alignment. Dell's going to have a lot to talk about as far as how she would describe that within frequency. But it's just bringing things back into alignment, and that we get to be in that alignment, that we get to be agents of bringing things back into that alignment. And I'm sure this was spoken about yesterday on the talk, but redefining what you think creativity is, because a lot of times we'll just throw it into the category of arts, visual media, entertainment, music, sound, that type of stuff. But creativity is everywhere. Anything that you touch, make, think, it requires creativity. Everything that is everything that you see, like like this required an idea. Everything began with an idea or a thought. This was in somebody's mind. Somebody then designed it. Somebody then had to produce it. But it requires a thought, requires an idea. And so, what we want to jump into today, what I really want to jump into today, is kind of talking you through, some questions that are going to help you kind of resolve maybe some internal hurdles that you have with creativity. And then Dell's going to bring you into some very practical things that you can do. She's going to describe some things that I'm going to be learning from her on when it comes to frequency and how frequency connects to creativity and how you can get into that flow. So, um, when you build and create, I'm reading off some of my notes. When you build and create out of a known and accepted field of information, you're often innovating. So you can either innovate or you can what I say invent. You could either so there's innovation and there's invention. And I think we're in a season where we're going to need some invention, where we're going to need some brand new things that have never been made before. So, like an example of invention would be, I keep seeing hearts from Dell. It's like just you're distracting me, Dell, with all those hearts. But an example of like think of business, think of an invention in business lately, and the ones that I always think of are like Uber and Airbnb. So you have massive companies that don't own a single vehicle or a piece of real estate. These companies turn everyday people's homes and vehicles into a way of providing transportation and lodging. And that's never been done before on a global scale. But they rethought it. But it's a new system that literally turned the old paradigm upside down. And so these new systems are disruptive. Obviously, they're disruptive because now all these old ways of doing things either have to adapt or they die. I believe the church itself is in a season like that, where we're going to be coming into like, who are we? What are we? How do we do what we do? And that the creativity that exists within this group and in his church globally is going to start shifting things in a way where that creativity is accessed by everybody. There's going to be a removal of hierarchies, where it's like, or laity, that idea of like there's some sort of us and them. Like, no, there's just an us, and we're one in him, and he wants us to be creative. Um, Jamie brought up in her talk yesterday that, imagination's so natural in children. I mean, it's just something all children possess, imagination. But somehow, along the way, if their imagination's not fostered, it just kind of starts dissolving. We bring in like these other processes for like critical thinking that she talked about, and we forget because we think imagination, or we may think this or have a deep, unconscious belief about this, that imagination's imaginary. So I would say it again. We may think imagination is imaginary, meaning not real, not practical, not a useful thing. And so we discard it for like left brain, what we call like left brain critical thinking, and we get things done by study, by research, by accumulation of knowledge. But there's this really powerful verse. It said, I think this is in Hebrews. I'm jumping around in my notes a little bit, but I wanted to bring up this verse to you real quick. Because in Hebrews chapter 11, it talks about how it's by faith that we understand. I think it's verse 3. By faith, we understand that the worlds were made, everything that is seen was made by that which is unseen, right? And so, but it's interesting. It says understanding comes by faith. That's really cool. That's a really cool equation there, because we think understanding comes through research and all these other what we'd say are more flesh driven, brain driven, practical things that we have to do to get understanding around something. But what if understanding is just out there and wants to come at you? Because I think it's Isaiah chapter 11, I always looked this direction to access something in my brain. uh in chapter 11, verse 1, it's talking about the stump of the root of Jesse. It's a prophecy about Jesus, but it says on him will be the spirit. This is verse 2, a spirit of wisdom, revelation, understanding, knowledge, counsel, power, fear of the Lord. But understanding is a spirit. So that's pretty cool. I think within that, you could argue that creativity flows through spirit, through entity, not it's not something that you have to muster. It's not something that you have to uh, strive or strain to do. Because a lot of times what we'll do is we'll make creativity a um, a job or a task. And it's not a task as much as it's sitting in a space with God in union and seeing what wants to happen. I love saying it that way. Like what something wants to happen. There's an idea that wants to happen. You're a radio receiver. Your imagination is that receiver. And he wants to give you things that are going to make this world a better place, that are going to bring solutions, that are going to create beauty, that are going to create awe. And um, creativity doesn't have to be that process where it feels like you're doing it, like you're an independent being and it's all coming from you. And it's like it's up to you to be creative, if that makes sense. Creativity is a co work. It's co, meaning it's you in union. That creativity can explode then because you're in oneness and union with all creativity. You have access to that. And so I would say you're just meditating on truth that reaffirms, reestablishes your union with God is going to explode all areas of your life. Whatever his nature and character are, wants to manifest and flow through you through that union. Well, if you don't believe you're one with him, you're going to have a hurdle there, right? It's going to be a big hurdle. So jump around a little bit. So 3 things. I said I was going to talk about questions for you, questions for God, and then I was going to talk a little bit about my process. And so a question for you. Have you agreed somewhere in time that you are not creative? Other people are creative, but not me. Or I am creative. I'm just not that creative. I'm not creative like that person or that person or that person. And we get into the comparison game. So remember, to be human is to be creative. To be in union with God is to be creative. So whenever those subconscious thoughts come and they say, well, you're not creative, you can simply replace that thought with the truth, which is, I am creative because I'm in union with God. I am one with all creativity. There is no lack. You lack no good thing for any good work, right? You've been given the divine nature, not the old. The old's gone, the new has come. And so it's just reaffirming, reestablishing, well, I have this union with God, therefore all things are possible. Even I could be creative, right? Because really, if you start seeing it that way, you just understand that you're just the filament in the light bulb, right? And so if you see yourself as the filament in the light bulb, you're not the electricity. We look at creativity like we have to produce the electricity. You don't have to produce it. That's good news. You get to rest in it, be the filament, just be in union. As long as there's connection, power can flow. As long as there's connection, energy can flow. As long as there's connection, the sound can flow. As long as there's connection, creativity can flow. So it's just all about that. I go back to overflow of the heart kind of language and union language when it comes to creativity. And so I would say the most creative I've ever been is when I'm in this place of just rest and union with God. That's when it flows. When I have a problem, I don't get anxious or uptight or strained. My nervous system is at rest. I'm trusting that is coming from somewhere else. I don't have to produce it. The creativity will just come. What I need or what the world needs that has to flow through me is going to come through another source. That's good news. All right, another question. Do you feel alone in being creative? I kind of already talked about this, but we can often feel like the creative process is up to us or like that we're operating independently. You may think I have to come up with the best idea and with it feels like feelings of performance, anxiety creep in. But if you're in union with God, you are co-creating. That's good stuff. You're co-creating. And you're not producing the electricity, right? You're not producing, you don't have to produce the creativity. It's this union with him that starts expressing itself creatively. Jamie brought this up. She said we can make creativity a task and forget that imagination should be part of our thought process. So just like when she brought up the idea that children are innately, um, their imaginations are at peak. They're just create like if you study, and I think you've probably seen these studies where researchers will measure creative levels within kids, and they're all off the charts. They're like considered like, wow, gosh, they're gonna be an artist when they're older because their level of creativity is just off the charts. And it's all kids. All kids are like this. It's just like, but so for some reason, the ones that end up staying with maybe some sort of artistic expression or whatever in their life, just learned how to maintain their imagination. That's usually what it is. It was fostered in them. So now as adults, we get to say, okay, well, I need to re-engage my imagination. I need to re-engage this part of me that was meant to be practical for my life. Because we keep thinking imagination's impractical, but it's not. It's literally like one of the most practical things that you can engage with, because it's literally a big way in which God flows through you with ideas, thoughts, and solutions. So, okay, a couple questions. Um, oh, another question for you. Third question for you before I move on. Yes. Do you believe to be creative takes years to develop? Like, it's like we can think, and so I'll say it again. Do you believe to be creative takes years to develop? Like, I can only be that good. There's this 10,000 hour rule, right? Dell knows this within music. Like, in order to really become skilled at your craft, it does usually take about 10,000 hours plus, where you move into a different zone of musicality, your ability on an instrument. Now, some of those things are just true because they're true and they'll always be true. You just got to put the time in on some of these things. I will say this, for many of us, creativity is just dormant though, because we weren't taught how to access it. And then when you're taught how to access it, you'll be able to access it quickly and more quickly and more quickly and more quickly. But it's also, remember, it's not uh, a like creativity is not like a power that you have to uh, exert. It's one that you receive and it just flows through you. This is where it gets exciting. Now, to master an instrument, yeah, you probably need 10,000 hours plus. And some would say 20 or 30, but it's like, but for creativity to flow, it just requires a belief, an intention. It's there. I just need to start tapping back into it and realize you're not the source of it. God's the source of it. And that in that union with him, it can just flow effortlessly. And that's where it gets really fun, really exciting. Um, you all probably may have heard of the 4 stages of becoming an expert. I wanted to review them real quick because it's very practical. It's a helpful way to think through how like this movement of creativity in your life, or some of the skills that you develop in your life. And this will make more sense after we talk about this. But so the first stage of becoming an expert is you're unconsciously incompetent. It just basically means you don't know what you don't know. So if you want to become a world renowned chef, and you like, I would settle for just being a chef to start with. You don't know that, like, you may not know, hey, I need to go to this school or do these classes or take these courses or get these types of this work experience. But once you do discover, hey, I know where I need to go to get the tools in order to eventually be a chef, you go to stage two, which is you're consciously incompetent. You still don't know what you need to know, but you know enough to know where to go find that knowledge. Hopefully that makes sense. Stage one, unconsciously incompetent. You don't know what you don't know. Step two, you're consciously, I don't know what I just did. I just put balloons up. Um, you're consciously incompetent, which means you know what you need to know, but you still don't know it. But step three is you become consciously competent. So you've gone to school, you've done the things, you want to be a nurse, you've gone to nursing school, you've uh, studied, you've done the tests, you've proven yourself knowledgeable, um, and people that are training you give you this thing called a diploma that says you've got the goods, you can go do this thing. And then you go get a job, and then you're doing the work, and you're consciously competent. You know what you need to know, and you know how to do it, and you've demonstrated that you can do it. But there's this really cool thing that is in step four, where you become what uh, the experts call unconsciously competent. And I liken it to, I like the example of the chef because so picture a chef that's in their kitchen and they are in the zone. It's level four. And they are looking down and they're cooking something that is masterful. They're not looking at a recipe, you know. They're not even looking. They just reach out and they grab the tool or the instrument or the knife that they need. They don't put a timer on because they just know when to turn this thing or move this thing or pull it out of the oven or how to reduce the temperature because it's intuitive. It's intuitive. And you move into this unconscious space. And so I would say, creativity has always been there, but there's this these stages of becoming competent in creativity. The idea is there will be things where you're like, okay, I got to put 10,000 hours in to learn this instrument and be really good at least 10,000 hours. But eventually you want to go into this zone where God shows you how to start just flowing in it, and it's not a mechanical expression, it's just an extension of you. And then you're just creative. You're just creative. You are creative because your mind believes it, your heart believes it, you demonstrate it, you do it all the time, and you're not even trying anymore. There's not a trying involved. And like I should be creative. I should be this. I should do that. And my friend Sylvia says, well, stop shouldn't on yourself, which I love. Stop shouldn't on yourself. It just makes me laugh. But it's not a should. It's not, it's you possess creativity. You can be creative because you are one with God. And that is where it flows from. So, a couple questions for God. So those were questions for you, a couple questions for God, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dell. And then I'll talk later about my activation if we have time for it, because she's got a lot of great stuff to go through too. So there's this song called You Won't Relent, uh, written by Misty Edwards and her bass player, and I forget her bass player's name. Um, but he goes, You won't relent until you have it all. My heart is yours. It's kind of low. Sorry, started a little low. But the story behind how that song was written it's pretty amazing. So the bass player that's in this band, female, she's sitting at home reading the Bible, reading this passage in Song of Solomon's, and it says basically you won't relent until you have it all, and it's this very intimate language, and she's just sitting there reading it, and she asks this very interesting question that as a songwriter I'd never heard asked before. I'm like, and because I heard her ask it, gave me permission to ask it. And this was the question: what does this sound like in heaven? And the question was directed to God. What does this sound like in heaven? And she said, literally, in a flash, a melody drops in her. Da, 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 da. And she just keeps playing it like, oh my gosh, this is so, I don't know what it is about it. She just kept playing it. She goes to rehearsal and she's with the whole group. Misty comes in, who's the lead singer of that entity. And she starts, the bass player just starts playing this melody. No words exchanged. She hasn't said anything. Misty spontaneously starts singing, "You won't relent until you have it all." And like literally the words were verbatim right out of Song of Solomon 6, chapter 6 or chapter 8, whatever the verse or the chapter was that the bass player had been sitting in just an hour previous. Now, that is wild. I'm like, that is how creativity can flow. And it gave me a peek into like, I need to start asking God better questions. I need to ask God questions that invite him into the creative process because up till that point, I would say some of the things I had created were okay and they were good, but I wouldn't say they were co-created. The moment I started asking God these questions, I started moving into the co-creative process because I'm involving God in it. He has ideas about it. He has the solutions before you even bring the problem. And to him, it's not even a problem. He's solution. He is solution. And so a couple questions that you might want to write down, then I'm going to turn it over to Dell is, what does this sound like in heaven? What does this look like in heaven? What does this look like to you, God? I've got a problem at work. I've got a problem in my family. I want to write a song. I want to make something. What does this look like to you? Well, what's wanting to be made? Literally just asking these questions will erupt the creative process. It'll start just coming because it wants to come to you because you're asking the right questions. And I think one of the most powerful questions you can ask God is, what question should I be asking you right now? I would say often we don't even know what to ask him. Like I think I know what to ask him. And so my own mind is kind of leading the process as opposed to just be like completely clean slate. I don't even know what to ask you. What should I be asking you right now? He gives you the question. If he gives you a question, it's a question he wants to answer. And that's really fun. All right, Dell, I'm turning it over to you.
So
And then
good.
we'll talk about some activations.
Can I share a story real quick, Del? Just in a line with what Joel just said about the bass player and the sound. I've been painting for a while, and I started asking the Lord, I want colors from heaven. I want to be able to mix colors from heaven, never seen on the earth before. And I've been praying and asking, and eventually I saw this angel that now works with me in color. But this angel said something to me really interesting. He said, every time you're going to mix a color, it will never be the same. You can get that color as close as possible. In the naked eye, it could be the same, but the molecular structure with the amounts that you mix with the paint will not ever be the same. So in innate, you're mixing a new color every time, a heavenly color. And secondly, I'm never in the same space, whether heart space, head space, environmental space, when I'm mixing my colors, which Dal is going to tell you guys now about frequency that has an effect on the color that I've just mixed. So asking those questions that Joel is talking about is so important because the question triggers the new. And that's what we're looking for in creativity. Miss Dell.
Okay, got to get rid of this cat that wants on my lap. Um, Joel, that was bodaciously awesome. Can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah, I was muted because I don't
Yes.
want to interrupt any of this
Okay.
wonderfulness.
All
Yeah,
right. So I'm going to I'm a teacher. And one of the things that as a teacher, we learn how to hit a variety of learning styles. And we have auditory learning, visual learning, and feeling. There's a lot of ways that we're learning. And so I want to hit at least 3 of those through a PowerPoint presentation, which you are all emailed the presentation plus another PDF that has a bunch of exercises on it. Because again, I wasn't sure whether we were actually going to, how much time we were going to have to do an activation during this time. So I have several activations for you. Now I'm going to hopefully share my screen. Stop others' computer sound. Okay. It shouldn't stop mine though, should it? Okay, I don't think so. Okay. This is what I want to do. So we're sharing that. Okay, we're going to do and I like to roll back the curtain because dun, 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 dun. This is the frequencies of creativity. Frequency is everything has a resonant frequency. Your thoughts, your actions, everything resonates a frequency. And I'll go into like my websites and all that stuff at the end. I hope that sounds, she's playing on the toy. Okay. Number one, and you've probably all read this in scripture, is life and death are in the power of the tongue. And I need to minimize us. There we go. There we go. We're all minimized. So life and death are in the power of the tongue. The mind and the heart are the most powerful human tools. And out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And we get what we say, past, present, and future. We don't realize that we carry the frequency of things that we've spoken over ourselves 20, 30, 40 years ago until we reframe them, of which I will be talking about. Will it move to the next slide?
Dal, I can't see your presentation. I'm just trying to get it on there.
Oh, they can't see it?
Can you guys see it right now?
I see it.
Yes, I
I
see
can
it.
see.
Okay.
I see it.
All righty. I'm trying to figure out why it's not going. Let me
Can
try
you hit a
this.
space?
It's
Can you
showing.
hit the space bar?
Okay, well, this is a Mac and I'm not used to Macs because my PC crashed. Anyway, the key points of this presentation are I explain it through part of my journey because your journey is who you are, and God is going to use every part of that journey to help you through your process. And then I'm going to use two completely opposite stories, and you're going to get to see what's the difference between the two. And it all has to do with framing mindsets and thoughts, intents, and actions. Thoughts are a frequency, intents are a frequency, and all of our actions are a frequency. They create a resonant frequency that we put out. And then this is finding your creative side as well. So as I'm speaking, take notes on things that come to your mind that might bring some creativity into you. And then the activation is at the end. We'll see if we can get to it. And as I say, everything I learned in life, I learned as a classical musician. And I love what Joel said. You know, I used to joke with my students, I spent more years in a practice room than you are alive. And this is when I was teaching college. So you can imagine most of them are 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And here I've spent more life in a practice room than more than 20 years. I mean, you have to do that. And then things become second nature to you. One of the things that I've learned through being a classical musician is practice takes patience and perseverance. I call them the 3 Ps. And I had them in my studio, along with a sign that said no weenies. And people walk in like, you shall not play like a weenie. But I learned this because, I have a doctoral degree in music, and that taught me persistence. I used to hate researching, and now I absolutely adore researching. I mean, when you write a 300-page dissertation, you have to learn to like to research. But the biggest thing is I learned how to achieve excellence. And then with my 40 years of teaching in college through kindergarten, I learned how to teach. Public school, when you're standing in front of a group of kindergartners and they're misbehaving, the problem is you, not them. And you learn how to present things to people in a manner that they can understand. And I also learned how to work with people and understand the various learning styles. And then I found that creativity flowed over into other areas outside of music. I made musical instrument lamps. I got a door shed in my backyard. Every construction project I've ever done, there's always something creativity. Even my teaching philosophy. And then this is the biggest thing. Talent is a starting point. If we don't practice what talents have been given to us, we're going to be stagnant. And then we have to persist with consistency for the most bodaciously awesome results. I have to get the word bodacious in there at least once or twice. And here it is. The mind is everything. What you think, you become. And thoughts rule. So pink is my least favorite color. And Joel said, I need to put this on here. You know, I grew up with 7 brothers and my dad raised us. And so I was a tomboy. But then God started showing me pink represents God's love. And I chose to use it in this presentation because I want to reframe my thoughts about the color pink. So sometimes I will choose something that I don't like because I'm reframing my thoughts. So we can reframe our intentions by focusing on and practicing new thoughts, which breeds and creates new habits. And I call this the bench of 3. And the first time I think I heard this was, I don't know, it was Mike Parsons or Ian Clayton. But so a bench of 3, you've got thoughts. And I look at, so get a picture in your mind. So this is the third, this is using the imagination. You're sitting on the bank of a river, and in the river is flowing leaves, debris, and things. And then you can look on the other side, you know, are there animals there? Are there trees? Is there a farm? There's all of these things represent thoughts. And then we can accept the thought. We start focusing on one of those things that's in the river or beyond the river. Then what we do is we take and we frame an intent. It's like a contractor will go to an architect and say, this is my idea. This is my thought. Now, can you build me an architectural plan? And then the action is actually building the house. We do something with our thoughts and our intents. So thoughts, intents, and action are a bench of 3 that has a result. So we see a manifestation of that. Okay. And so I'm going to explain the definition of a bench of 3. We have 3 things that work together to create a governmental authority over something in our lives. So examples are judicial, executive, legislative branches of many governments. We have a body, we have a soul, and a spirit. There are 3 notes that make up a chord in music, the 1, the 3, and the 5. And a bench of 3 is a 3-stranded cord that's not easily broken. That's how the Bible describes it. So a bench of 3 are 3 things that create a stronghold or a 3-stranded something. Okay, moving along. So now this is where I'm going into my life. The abundance of my heart. This is what was in my heart before 2009. And I'm going to let you decide, do you think that this came out of good thoughts or negative thoughts? So prior to being married in 1994, I was a very vibrant person. I had just accepted a teaching job in the Seattle area. I was playing in a couple of major orchestras in the area. I was doing all kinds of cool things. Then I got married and I moved back to Moscow, Idaho, which is where I'm from. And I married an emotional, spiritual, and verbal abuser. So a very strange illness, much like chronic fatigue, began in 1996 that lasted 19 years. My part of the abuse, I had a friend who said, well, you had a part to play. And I'm like, I didn't make him abuse me. My part was I agreed with the lies. The thoughts came down the thought river. I pulled them out and agreed with them. And I wrote about that in my book, But Words Will Never Hurt Me. I could not get past the illness and thought I was stuck for life in a never-ending cycle. I became the opposite personality and more closely matched my husband's thought processes. And I had no hope for the future. So you can imagine that I was pulling all these negative thoughts out of the thought river. I wasn't letting them float on by. I had minimal creative ventures during this time of my life. Sometimes trauma and life circumstances will keep us from being creative. But, see, I like the word but, because we can change, we can reframe. Now, this is looking at the abundance of my heart after 2010. In 2010 to 2014, I began a spiritual awakening through a book that I found, which is in the link. It's called If This Were a Dream, What Would It Mean by Murray Duick. And I attended a conference in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where I met Ian Clayton. I don't know, you probably can't see my cursor, but there's a blue thing up here. That's Lake Coeur d'Alene, and Moscow is down here. So it gives you an idea where I'm talking about. I put to practice with patience and perseverance. That is another bench of 3. Practice, patience, and perseverance. What I was learning. So I would go into my office between classes, I would listen to teachings, and I would create my own exercises. And now I'm the healthiest I've been in over 40 years and have had no illnesses in the past 10 years. I created more in the last 10 years than I had any other season in my life. I'm starting to see manifestations of the supernatural in my life that in ways I never knew were possible. And my journey is in my books, and there's a clickable link at the end of this presentation, and you were all emailed it. So just click on those links and there you go. I asked the question, what changed between 2009 and to 2024? And that's where I'm going to go into next. The first thing I understood is we have a personal mountain. And if you see this picture, we are seated in Christ. So you look at the top of the mountain, these rays represent perfect love, just shining all throughout the mountain. We're seated in Christ on the throne of our life and underneath perfect love. So when we're seated in him, we're in love, we're over the top, we can see everything going on. Then we have our spirit gates, our soul gates, and our body gates. And I talk about this in my course, Mountains, Gates, and Castles. We govern our life from a place of rest and peace and love. There's another bench of three that sits at the top of our mountain in love as we're seated in Christ. And again, rest, peace, and love are frequencies. Circumstances are viewed completely differently when we see them through perfect love. So I was practicing every day, going up and seeing myself. And so even as I'm talking about this, visualize yourself sitting at the top of the mountain in perfect love, no matter what the circumstance is. And here we frame our thoughts, our intents, and our actions. We create that bodaciously awesome bench of three, and then we begin to speak over ourselves what God says about us. Okay. Then we learn to live in an ascended position in the mind of Christ at all times. That position is right here at the very top of the mountain, in rest, seated in Christ. And then that perfect love flows down the mountain and fills every gate that is in our body, which is, I look at it like a mountain. Okay, so our creativity manifests when we're seated in him. And Joel spoke to that. I'm just saying it in a slightly different way. But the best part about all this is we get do-overs, woo-hoo, when we make mistakes. It's all about our thoughts, intents, and actions and knowing how to reframe them. And this takes practice. So here's my do-over lesson. There's the beautiful state of Idaho again. That star represents Moscow. If you're not from the United States, eminent domain is where they took my house for a highway project. And in this second picture, they had public hearings, and I'm the one who's leaning over the map, looking at where my house is. And I, after reading the 1,000+ page environmental impact statement, I sided with the state, which everybody thought I was nuts for doing that. But I'll tell you why in a minute. We all got this relocation paperwork. And then all of a sudden, I'm meeting territorial angels and beings that I'd never seen before. And they're saying, you need to understand what just compensation is in the spirit. What does God say about just compensation? There was an environmental group that was suing the state, and it took 7 years to go through this whole process. And I ended up being taken to the courts of heaven. I mean, they're saying, okay, we need to go to the courts for this one. And this was a learning experience for me. I didn't know anyone else who was doing this. So my growth in this is in 2010, when I was part of Samuel's Mantle, which is a prophetic training school in Canada, we had to practice giving prophetic words to each other. And someone said to me, I see your life like a highway with overpasses and boulders and a road going in underneath and trees and things in the distance and blah, blah, blah. And I actually had this picture in my mind. 3 years later, this picture that you see here was on page 181 of the state's paperwork. My house is, I don't know if you can see my cursor, it's down here on the left-hand side. That's the big shop that was behind my house. And I said, oh my gosh, this highway is supposed to go here. And so I had to learn to reframe the whole process. But in this, I learned to function from a position of rest and peace while I was seated in Christ on the throne of my life. And I saw a lot of things happen in the spirit before they actually happened. I spent a lot of time in my heart garden meeting with the Trinity to understand the purpose of this project. And I will have to say, one time I was whining and Jesus said to me, so you think this project is all about you, don't you? And I had this went, oh, excuse me. But this trial led to greater creativity. Within 5 months of going to that conference in Coeur d'Alene, I started creating this new music. And I focused on positive thoughts in a negative situation. You know, that scripture was a song, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God. It doesn't say for, it says in everything. And I had to learn that. And I like to say this, love rules, fear drools. So love is the strongest possible frequency that overrides all negativity and is the leader into all creativity. When we can go on the top of our mountain and we can sit in that perfect love, it's amazing what it will do for us. So creativity, it is not limited to the arts. And I think everyone has already been talking about that. Britannica, and this is where the geek in me comes out, says that creativity is the ability to make or otherwise bring into existence something new, whether a new solution to a problem, a new method or device, or a new artistic object or form. Think of Einstein. Think of the guy who did the periodic table. Someone mentioned that in the comments yesterday. All of that is creativity. Every time we think outside the box, we're stepping into creativity. And here's an example. I did my master's degree at Yale, and one of my work study things was to do all of the faculty receptions for the faculty recitals. And as an undergraduate at University of Idaho, my aunts who were so happy that somebody in the family was majoring in music came and would do these phenomenal receptions after my recitals. So what I did is I would go in the very first recital that I did for a faculty member at Yale. I think it was a piano professor. I set up this amazing elaborate thing. I had the lights in the room down low, and up above the fireplace, I had candles. So you're visualizing what this looked like. And all the faculty walked in, everybody walked in, and they're looking around the room in shock. And I found out later that most people who had it would just throw things on plates and they didn't do anything. And this whole process, that's creativity. I'm taking something that I'm given and doing something with it. And it led to a really nice award when I graduated, which was kind of fun. We see creative ideas in science, math, physics, feats of engineering, architecture. So everything that you do, you can find a creative bent to it the moment you step outside the box. Everything in your life has a purpose. Your gifts, your hobbies, your talents, your desires, your dreams, even your failures are put within you by God. And then I put an assignment in the other PDF that you can just practice. I like practicing. So here's some creativity at work. When ideas come, we don't ignore them. When ideas come, write them down, especially when they come from far left field. If something comes through your brain that you're like, where did that come from? And as Murray Dewick used to say, is that the pizza I ate last night, or is that you, God? A lot of the times it really was the voice of God. Often creativity comes from a need, which is why these two pictures are here. If someone says it can't be done, do it anyway. Find a way. You know, when people have said things to me, I'm like, watch me. I have another story I could tell about that at some point. But as we sit with the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and the cloud of witnesses and the angels that have been assigned to us, and you imagine this beautiful garden that you're sitting in, and you meet with them there, and you discover answers there and through meditation. Those are some ways of doing it. So here's some example. These are all musical instrument lamps. There's a group of us who were trying to give instruments to local schools in North Idaho, and we didn't have the money, but they had all these broken instruments that they couldn't do anything with. So I'm like, well, let's make lamps out of them. And then we would sell them at our concerts. And then we were able to give 50 plus instruments to schools that just didn't have enough money to buy instruments. And then in this other picture on the right-hand side, I really wanted a shed in my backyard and I had all these doors. I'm like, let's build a door shed. And so it cost me a quarter of the money it would have been to go buy one of those prefab sheds, and it's way cooler. A positive attitude paves the way towards any creativity. And so, and you bring out your creativity. We spend time daily meditating on creativity. If we're not thinking about the creativity, and it's not, we got to get that frequency of creativity moving. Then we journal all the ideas. Then we create lists of our dreams and passions, and then we take those into meditation. Include what you're good at, what you've always wanted to do, and natural areas of talent. I tell people I am not a talented musician. I just spend a lot of time in a practice room so that I could do it. How to move forward. Be persistent in your pursuit of creativity. Be consistent in your efforts, and practice framing positive thoughts, intents, and actions. You see 2 sets of bench of 3s here. Patience, consistency, practice. All right. And then remember that life and death are in the power of the tongue. What do you want? Speak it over yourself. And I think we're going to skip past the activation. In the PDF that you've got, I'm going to be doing a 3-day challenge in August, and that's on the website if people want to register for that. Here are all the sources. You know, as an academic, I'm like, you got to put all the sources. And anyway, that is it on that. So I'm going to turn it back over to anyone else who wants to add their 2 bits to that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love how the way that you frame it up, it creates personal responsibility. Because the life that we have now, we've largely created it. We are creative. Everything that you're experiencing in life right now, on some level, take personal responsibility. You've created it. Not all of it, but a lot of it. Do you like the life that you have right now? Good. Don't learn how to create, learn how you're creating, and just learn how to turn that rudder. Like these tools that Dell just gave are exceptional.
There's something that I picked up between both of you guys that was so interesting, is that a lot of what you spoke about was love, and creativity flows out of love. Love for yourself first, love for God, but love for yourself. Because I think a lot of creativity, or the reason why we don't step into creativity, is because we're not in union with ourselves. You know, we understand union with God, we understand union with the Trinity, but what Dal was talking about was coming into her own identity and truly being healed. And out of that place, what Joel spoke about earlier, creating a new system for yourself with God, with the Spirit. And it's the system that you create that eventually becomes your new. And that's what we're talking about in creativity, is can we look new? Can we look at new things? The beginningness, go back into creation, in the beginningness of creation. So thank you, guys. That's so. Joel, did you have another activation?
Well, I have 2 thoughts. One was because you said the one of the common threads is love, and a big part of my journey, for those that know some of the story behind Iron Bell Music, which was a worship entity I was part of, Iron Bell Music. It started out of a place of exploration, of adoration prayer. And then that shifted, adoration prayer shifted into adoration language and lyric, where the quick definition of adoration prayer is just telling God who he says he is in Scripture, as revealed in Scripture, his names, his nature, and his character. So when you do that, what's wild is you become acutely aware of how little you actually believe he is those things. You also become aware he's not offended that you don't believe it. He's there to help you believe it. And then as you keep pressing into that process, eventually you get a revelation from him of those things. And then when you know him, so what happens is your believing of him dissolves into a knowing. You don't just believe he's something anymore, you know he's something, which is a higher state of relationship. And out of that place of knowing comes an affection, and it's intimacy. And so I'd say intimacy breeds creativity. So what is it? What are the things in your life that breed intimacy with God? Go in those places, you're going to see an acceleration in creative spaces, because we could look at all these tools and understand, like, I know how I can take some of these tools and get a result. So for those of you familiar with the Chris Blackaby language, when he talks about the 100-fold reality and paradigm, that there's this 30-fold experience, and there's a 60-fold experience, and there's this 100-fold experience. I would say, in the 60-fold experience, for those that aren't familiar with that language, the 30-fold kind of represents this mindset that we're saved, but we're like as believers, but we're just waiting to die to go to heaven. But that's kind of the ceiling on your relationship with God. The next is I'm familiar with the power of the Holy Spirit in my life. And wow, there's a real power there that can get things done, but you're still not walking in the fullness of your identity as a son. So in sonship is the fullness, but within that paradigm, because I've spent many years within charismatic Pentecostal circles that understood the gifts of the Spirit, and there's a tendency to take these tools to get an outcome. But I had written down four things. Intimacy breeds creativity, but God is not a means to an end.
Yeah, so good.
And so if you think he's a means to an end, you might be able to learn some of these practical tools and protocols, disciplines, like these three things where you go from thought, intention, action, and you get this result. Well, I'm going to keep applying that. But ultimately, the bedrock needs to be intimacy.
Yeah.
Or you're just going to be like, I'm just in it to get something done.
That's why I was saying, when you do that in perfect love, really when I got healed was when I started cleaning out the gateways.
Yes.
But see, now what I'm doing, and I do this in the Mountains, Gates, and Castles class, is to, rather than clean them out, just infuse perfect love into all of it. Because perfect love, what does it do? It casts out all fear.
Yep.
And so when we sit in that place of perfect love, I wasn't necessarily trying to get healed. I was just like, I want to be in love. I want to feel what Christ's love is like. I want to be in that place of perfect love and resonate with that, so that I can see what my next piece is. So that's really.
And what happens with that then, it takes away performance.
Right.
It takes away performance when we can sit in perfect love, because then flow comes through and not working at it. Because even with everything that we give, like Dal gives these perfect protocols, but even that becomes religious if you don't do it in love. Yeah. And we're trying to get out of this space of legalistic creativity, if we can put it that way. So sitting in love causes you to always look at love new. Because there's always going to be something new. And out of that space, the beauty of creativity flows. So there's no more performance on your creativity. I think a lot of people want to create in their doing, right? And there's a doing process, because we're manifesting through the flesh. There's a doing process, but you need the flow of the Spirit so that the doing looks different. And that's what I loved about yesterday's session with Jamie and them, about the playfulness. Because love is very playful.
Yes.
Not rigid.
That's right. So here, I've got, like, if we have time for it, I've got like a very
Yes.
short activation that we could do. And this is going to sound, might be a little elementary for some of you guys, because I know some of you, and I know that you're probably pretty deep into some really cool ways of tapping into the Spirit and being in the flow. But the one that I love to do is closing my eyes and not allowing the imagination to take over for some of those who have done the void meditation, learning that you actually have a different interface. Then you have an imagination interface. You also have a void interface, which is uh, almost like a different channel on the TV. It is pretty wild, and I just call it like the black canvas. It's not a white canvas; it's a black canvas, and you're just waiting for God to put something there. And so, just real briefly, like I'd prayed for. Usually, when I pray for people, this is the method I use. If you've ever seen, did you all ever see Mork and Mindy back in the 80s, that show with Robin Williams? So Mork would go, this is Robin Williams' character, whenever he was going to go connect with his alien race or whoever it was he was talking to, he'd go stand in this completely dark room and it just have a spotlight on him. But there was nothing else around him. There's nothing. I mean, not a lamp, not a couch, not a tree, nothing. And so what I do is I imagine somebody, even if I've never met them before, and this is usually the case, I've never met most of the people I've prayed for because they just sign up for prayer uh, through one of the ministries I connect with. And I'll picture their silhouette. So I've got nothing but black. I'll picture their silhouette, and then I'll picture Jesus coming next to them. And then a scene emerges, an activity emerges, a conversation emerges, something happens, but I'm not guiding it. And then I just kind of write down as it kind of unfolds. And this one guy I'd prayed for, I'd never met him, didn't even know what he looked like. So I just used that silhouette method. And I just had a picture. The scene that emerged was him and Jesus walking on the boardwalk by the ocean. So bright, beautiful, sunny day. They're both eating ice cream cones and they're laughing and like slapping each other on the back and just having the time of their life. That's all I saw. And like, you don't have to give everything meaning, you don't have to try to interpret it. So I just wrote it down. I'm like, okay, this sounds like a cheesy Hallmark moment. But I'm going to be faithful. I'm going to share it. So I shared it. And the guy's like stops everything because we're in a room full of other people that are praying. He goes, "How did you know that?" And you all have had that experience. How did you know that? I'm like, how did I know what? I don't know what. He goes, "I've been saving my entire life to buy an ice cream store on the boardwalk. That's what I want to do when I retire." And I'm like, wow. I'm like, that's awesome. I love that. And it just flowed out of a innocent, childlike, I'm just dreaming with you, God. But it's kind of like you're consciously awake, consciously dreaming. I mean, it's not actual dream state. You're awake and you're conscious, but you're tapping into the black canvas or the darkness or whatever, the dark space. And so the quick activation would be, I'm just going to have you all do this real quick, uh, close your eyes. You don't, if you like to have it really dark, you can put your fingers over your eyes to kind of drown out some of the light. And remember, you're not bringing your imagination as much into this as you're letting God lead it. And so you can think of a very specific person that might be on your heart. It could be a issue at work, or a job, or a issue, a problem. It could be anything. And it could be almost inanimate, where it's like you don't have to give a face to something. You could almost just bring like an object, like a box, into your uh, frame of mind in that darkness, and you just see that box, and that box represents this thing. Or you could bring a person silhouette into this space, and then you let Jesus come right up next to that thing, and you wait, and you let the movie play out. And you just let it play out. And it's just like when Jesus, or when the Lord would take the prophets out, like Ezekiel, like he'd take them out in a high place and say, "What do you see? What is it you see?" Because he's wanting to show you something. And then you write down what you saw, and you're like, you know what? Sometimes you have to reset. You're like, you know what? I'm gonna start over. I chased a squirrel, and I'm thinking about my shopping list at the grocery store, or you know what I mean? And so sometimes you just have to reset. So the activation is simple. It's just close your eyes, get still, focus on his affection for you, focus on his affection for the person you're praying for, or the situation. What is he doing? It could be a phrase, a word, a movie in your mind, but you're not leading it, you're not guiding it. It's just you're moving more into that place of um, you're seeing that space as like a radio where it receives a signal as opposed to creating the signal. So as we began, even the call earlier, I saw Anthony in one of the frames and saw your hope hat, Anthony. And for some reason that I saw the Lord turning it like I don't know what it means, but turning it upside down and like like creating a new language around hope. Or I don't know what that upside downness means, but it's just like being able to see that kind of stuff and say, well, God, what are you doing in a person? And then you're able to do this open-eyed, like where Kirby Delanerol talks about how um, you can learn how to practice some of these things with your eyes shut, but eventually you can do them with eyes open. So I'm looking at Anthony, I'm seeing the hope on his hat. I see it turn upside down. The hat doesn't turn upside down, just the letters turn upside down. I'm like, what does that mean? Is it something in reverse? Is something upside down? I don't know what it means, but it's something that Anthony can press into and just be like, oh, God's doing something different. He's turning some things upside down. And hopefully that's beneficial, right? Because he
Yeah,
wants it
so
to be
good.
beneficial.
Okay, we have some time, so I asked Dal if she would do her activation for you guys as well. So let's do it.
Perfect. So I'm going to take a little bit of what they were talking about yesterday, and this is another part of the learning process is activating the imagination. So I'm going to have you, just like I had you looking at your thought river. But this time, I want you to imagine a beautiful garden. Now, if you're an artist, you might want to be drawing out what I'm saying. Or if you are a writer, you might want to be journaling what I'm saying. So find a way that works for you to activate this picture, whether it's on paper. Some of you might even be doing it through motion. If you're a movement artist, there's a lot of ways that you can act this out. So you're going to imagine the most beautiful garden you have ever seen in the world. I mean, in there are all these beautiful plants that you just adore. And in this garden is a bench. And there's some beautiful trees and some beautiful greenery and flowers all around this bench. And in front of this is a river or a stream that is and you can hear the water flowing down the river, and you can hear it flowing over the rocks. And you're sitting on the bench, and that out from some trees, you see a form. And before the form even comes in that it's Jesus, because you just feel that love flowing from him to you. So take a moment and just feel his love towards you. Feel the emotion of love. Feel the emotion of joy. Feel the emotion of peace. And then he comes and he sits on the bench next to you. And as you're sitting on that bench, you're going to entrain, which means you're going to pair your intention with his, that intention of perfect love. And then you're going to entangle, which is you're coming into agreement with that perfect love. Resonate with that perfect love. See, feel, hear, sense. Use every sense in your body. Some of you might even smell something. What do you smell? What smells like love to you? Activate all of your senses. Now look towards the river. The two of you get up, you and Jesus get up, and you walk arm in arm. You go over to the river and you sit on the river's edge. And then you dangle your feet in the river. You're feeling the love coming from the water. You look out and you see all these rainbow fish jumping around. You're thinking, rainbow fish. What are those? And you're sitting there and you're smiling at Jesus. He's smiling at you and you're just taking in that love. And you're watching the beauty of the river and seeing that it's also resonating with that perfect love. And as you do this, you see this beautiful sky above you. And you feel the rays of the sun coming down on you. And you are just simply entraining and entangling with a love that's so pure that it overrides any negativity that you might be feeling, or any frustration, or any fear, any anxiety. It just is washed down the river and goes away. And the fish are happily playing in the water. And you sit there with Jesus. And it is all about understanding, being a part of, enjoying, resonating with the frequency that is so strong and so full of joy and so full of life that it changes you to the very core of your being, to that smallest nanoparticle of who you are. Feel it go from the top of your head all the way down to the very tip of your toes. And if you're feeling any sickness or anything in your body or any pain, see that love go directly to those spots and just be infused. Because Jesus has his arms around you right now. He's releasing it into you as well. And then just stay in this position for a couple of moments. Okay, you can slowly come out of that, and out of the vision. And as you come out, just bring that feeling with you. Let it resonate through your entire being. Now I turn it back over to Tanya or Joel.
That was ooey gooey. That was a hot tub.
That was delicious.
I walked you through one of my activations I used to do all the time.
Mm.
And the rainbow fish are actually squirrels that would jump into me. And then I would take them and I would plant them in my heart garden and I would water them.
Mhm.
And then when it was time to go pick them, I would be directed to go pick them.
Love it.
Mm.
So good.
You know, there was this the thought that I had, one of the things that I had written down that I forgot to mention is um, you know, out of this creative process, obviously we're going to be making some wonderful things and better, more beautiful, more awesome. Um, and uh, I remember there was a season where I was getting to tour with some pretty cool bands in the past, and I remember I had this very tangible thought even then. I had the discernment to know that I was in that place not because of the music. I was in that place because I was supposed to be there. And knowing like, okay, I was probably critiquing my music at the time, being like, oh, it's not that great. I just know that there's a favor there because I was the thing that was needed in that place. That you're more valuable than the things you create.
So
The
good.
world needs you,
Yeah.
and your creativity is a bonus.
Well, can I add a little tiny story to this?
Yep.
When, because at the time that I started this journey, I was teaching at Washington State University in Pullman, which was only 8 miles from Moscow. And my office was in the basement of the music building, and I exchanged using the recording studio for recording time. So I worked for him doing all of his computer work and setting up the studio when the jazz band would come in and, whatever. And so then we would record my stuff. And when we were doing the 528 Creative DNA album, I had a bottle of water that was sitting on it because I was trying to capture it so we could make a 528 essence out of it. And the bottle of water fell on the keyboard and made this sound. And the Lord said, leave it in there. And I'm like, but it was a mistake. And the engineer said, you want to leave that in there? I said, yes, because even out of our mistakes, he makes something beautiful. So what I ended up doing was adding a sound with a percussion instrument over the top of that brought it out. So he started telling me to leave the mistakes in my music.
Come on.
So just because we think it's a mistake doesn't mean it is.
That's it. Totally. Well, that was a rich session. So good, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for everything that you guys just bring to the table in this creative soup that we can feast upon. And it's so beautiful. Yes, let's just eat.
Get your imaginations going. Get them going.
Yes, get some soup going in this creativeness. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much for just everything that you guys bring to the table. We really appreciate it. Okay, so guys, for tomorrow, there's a list of things I'm emailing you. Tomorrow's going to be more of an activation session. Come dressed comfortably. Bring a pillow. And the rest of the list is in the email. Okay. So how creative are we going to get with this pillow? Okay. So thank you everyone for joining. Oh, let me quickly just say this. Everything is recorded, right? Everything's recorded. Please be patient. You guys will get all the recordings in the email, but it won't be this week because I'm leaving for another conference and I'm only returning next week. So give me some time, but you guys will receive all of this beautiful nuggets in an email. So hang on. And then don't forget about the secret that we're going to release tomorrow. Okay? It's going to be phenomenal. That's my word, Dal. Phenomenal.
I'll add to it, bodaciously phenomenal.
That's it. Bodaciously phenomenal. Joel,
Don't
you want to
forget,
add a word?
I can
No,
say
I think
something
those
different.
those capture it great. I'll just do that.
Oh, yes, does it work?
Does it work?
I don't know how
Dude, I
he
don't know
gets,
if it's just the technology, it just
Yeah.
works for some people or what. I don't know.
I have to do it this way.
Yeah, me too. So much fun. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We see you guys tomorrow, same time, same place. Eileen and Selena. Love you guys. Have a good day.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Bye.
Hey,
Bye.
Dell, what
Thank
was the
you,
name of the
Del.
book? The book on dreams. What was the name of the book on dreams?
If
Put that in the
this
chat.
were a dream, what would it mean? There's a link to it in the PDF that you were all mailed today.
If this were a
A
dream,
dream, what would
what
it mean?
would it mean?
And it's by Murray Dewick.
Okay,
All of everything I talked about, all the links are in that
awesome.
PDF.
All right.
So
Bye,
good.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
See you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Del.
bye.
Thank you, Joe.
Good day.
So beautiful.
Thank you,
Bye.
Tanya. Honor you.
Oh,
Love
thank
you
you,
all.
Ellen. Love
Bye.
you guys.
Love you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you, Dal. So beautiful. I appreciate you.
Yes, it's been a fun time. So we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.